So hello, today we are at St Mary's and St Peter's Church in Birch in Essex, and I'd like to talk to you about the history of the churches and the village itself. Birch is a village in Essex. It's 5 miles from Colchester and 1.4 miles from Les Bretons. Birch is surrounded by Essex countryside. Its elevation is 51 metres or 167 feet in old money, and today's population is around 881. Birch has an unusual story to tell, for it has 2 churches, one in ruin and one about to be levelled. Morning. Neolithic Birch. Our Neolithic ancestors built a long barrow henge here, even before Stonehenge received its stone circle some 5,000 years ago. The Romans. It seems the Romans took a liking to Birch, building where we stand a villa, for in 1998, when the gravel pit was being dug up, remains were found. Just over there beyond those trees. Essex has 60 known villa sites, and Colchester, the Roman capital, was only 5 miles away on foot. Wonder perhaps will they find anything whilst digging here. The Saxons had divided Birch into Great and Little Birch, each with its own manor. Edric was the Thane of Great Birch, likely taking the high ground where St Peter's Church stands today. Edric was known as Edric of East Thorpe, where he came from, only 3 miles away. He would have 4 slaves here and a great sign of wealth. Little Birch's manor. Now Wulfrin, the second Thane, would own Little Birch and owned 5 slaves and a watermill, and it's likely Wulfrin's manor was near the ruin of St Mary's Church, about half a mile from here. The Normans. By 1086 Birch was under Norman rule. Robert de Gernon would be the first tenant-in-chief of Birch, and would build right here a Norman castle and moat and bailey. If we look around, we can see the sort of shape, defensive slope tapers off. Robert de Gernon was a powerful Norman baron who would attack the Saxon hill fort at nearby Stansted Mount Fidget, and there he would build the impressive castle which still stands to this day. Now we stand at the Heckford Bridge, a Saxon site also believed to have given Birch its name. I found once a pub stood here called the Angel and Seven Stars. What a great name. The landlord in 1614 failed to accommodate travellers who arrived late. By 1733 the pub would call itself the Angel. Today it's called the Heckford Angel. I read that once a year an annual feast was held here but excluded those involved in quarrelling, drunkenness or whoring. Today the old pub seemed all but abandoned. I just wonder what the Saxons would make of our lifestyle now. RAF Birch. During World War II, a heavy bomber airfield was built right here, consisting of 3 runways. Now if we take a look through the hedge line we can actually see the shape of the airfield. So if we can imagine that this is a triangular sort of shaped airfield, it goes up to here, goes off to there, and then you've got a perimeter road there which we'll see in a bit. Now originally built by the US 846th Engineer Battalion, it would be the last airfield to be built in England by the US Engineers in 1944. Now we can see that we're at the other triangular point. Now Birch Air Base became the airfield nobody wanted, but US Dakotas and Horsa gliders did take off from here in Operation Veracity in 1945. The operation crossing the Rhine in Germany. And it was a true American scale of all things. It had 60 Dakotas and 60 horse gliders. It was part of the largest airborne operation in history, with 16,000 paratroopers from England, America and Canada crossing the Rhine. So today just a few concrete roads remain, and I believe there's a brick structure in there somewhere, but it would be nice if a sign could remember this site. Now we have made our way to St Mary's Church, today a ruin but once a great Norman church. The nave. The impressive nave was built in the 12th century. Much surviving as when it was first built. Not much is known, but by 1736 the nave was in a ruinous state, and by 1768 it had no roof. Now if we pan around we can see the chancel directly in front of us. The chancel was added in the 14th century. We now stand where the chancel wall's been opened up. And we look upon the West Tower, which is built in 4 stages. We can still see the original roof line, and if we follow it downwards we can see the original 12th century wall and doorway. Now the 2 lower stages were built in the year 1440. Now in the year 1440 England recaptures Harfleur from the French in the 100 Years' War. And Henry VI would found Eton College, 1440. Now if we look up we can look at the upper stage. This was built in the 16th century in brick, along with the impressive stair turret. Now we know that in 1518 a parishioner left money in their last will and testament for church repairs. Now if we look here, there's the original south door, 12th century. Now we've moved back to the nave and the chancel. If we look here we have the pillars to buttress. This is a bit of a mystery, for pillars to buttresses are from an earlier church in the 11th century. For a pillars to buttress takes the load from above, and it's believed this would have supported a central tower. Roman brick dressings. Now if we look upon the Roman bricks, they're at least 1,700 years old. Maybe even fired soon after the time of Jesus Christ. Remember, Emperor Claudius marched on Colchester in 43 AD. It's incredible when you think of it that the Romans had a villa close by. So now we are making our way to St Peter on the Hill. Now we have made our way to St Peter St Paul. Let us talk about the ancient church history. For a church stood here in 1214, also dedicated to St Peter St Paul. Glorious sunny day today. It's light breeze, no rain, 27 degrees. Perfect. Now in 1214, St Peter's was owned by Ralph Gurnon, the Norman. Originally it had a nave and a lower chancel, and it had a wooden tower, more or less where this stone one is. And on the end, I wish I'd have brought the picture, we had defensive lancet windows. Now the first recorded rector here was Nicholas, clerk to Bishop Ostia in 1214. This is in the reign of King John and the Magna Carta. Now remember, this was 809 years ago. Now we know in 1241 that Lees Priory would decide who to elect as priest here. And the rectory house was called Field Kitchen, or sorry, Kitchen Field. Live at St Peter's. I shall now read you some moments in time here at St Peter's. In 1504, Richard Stoke left in his will and testament 2 cows to the church here. Three obits were here until 1548. Now an obit was an annual service remembering a deceased parishioner. From dawn, prayers were read, followed by mass and a procession to the grave. Now obits were funded by a benefactor or benefactors. In 1610, the rector here leased out the glebe fields to farm labourers to enhance his income. Now the very fields we look at, sadly soon a road will be built and demolition cranes will arrive. On Easter Day of 1666, only 4 people attended Mass here due to the plague. Now by 1849, St Peter's was so run down it was demolished. A special mention must be made to Charles Gray Round. Round was a barrister and owned Birch Hall and would marry Emma, and together this fine couple would promote religion education to the parish of Birch. And so the church what we see today was financed by Charles Gray Round in 1849. Its architect was Samuel Toulon. Now Round would also build the village school directly opposite. Built in white brick in 1847. Now we've moved back to St Peter St Paul's Church, which is built exactly over the foundations of the old church. Now we shall begin by talking about the northwest tower. It has 110 feet brooch spire. And it was described by Pesner, the historian, as a finger pointing to heaven, and I love that. I have moved slightly and we're going to now look at the clock. Which was added in 1897 to commemorate Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. Stopped at 6 o'clock. If we look above, we can just make out a pigeon. The belfry window. So now as we follow the fence, we pass 2 yews of considerable age. Now this yew here is over 5 metres in girth, making it either side of 500 years old. So we carry on, but a little further we have a yew which is over 6 metres in girth, and at first I missed it completely. Now I can tell you that this is actually the biggest yew tree in Essex that I've measured so far, making it about, well, either side of 750 years perhaps. You can just make out the spire. And just looking at this headstone, 1717. So now we continue along the fence line. And we now face the south aisle and south porch. And you can see quite a bit of damage on this side. Never quite understood why they've let it go so far, why it's not sort of patched up many decades back. Lightning strike. Now, in January 1960, the spire was struck by a freak lightning storm, requiring the top 12 feet to be replaced in Portland stone. This plane has been buzzing around all morning, it's like a fly. Now, in the same year, a brand new gilded weathercock was added, but it didn't end there, for decades later a low-flying Chinook helicopter would clip the weathercock, and as you can still see, it's not straight. Now, by 1990, the running costs and condition of St Peter's was so bad that it was closed and made redundant. Now, not through want of trying, a group of organisations tried their best to find a solution to save St Peter's Church, including the Diocese of Chelmsford, Historic Buildings and Places, North Essex Heritage, the Victorian Society and English Heritage. Now we shall continue our walk along the perimeter fence, and we shall pass under another yew. You can see this is a younger yew because of its colour of it. Now I measured this, it's just around 3 metres. So this one, I'm guessing, would be from the Georgian period. But still impressive. Another yew in here. We disregard this one. This is, I believe it's an Irish yew, and they're not technically measured because they all come from the 1700s, I believe. But this yew here, not able to, it's unrecorded. I'd love to gain access to it, and I would send the results off to the Ancient Yew Org. So we are now on the east view of St Peter's. Now, when it was finished, it could seat 700 people. It's hard to believe that within months this may well be knocked down. You can see how the ivy's climbed up the nave window there. Now we can see the weathercock's been clumped by the Chinook. You can see it clearly here. I'd love to have seen the paperwork for this back at the base. And I dare say the pilot got a nickname from it. You could just make out a bit of daylight coming through the coping stone there. Okay, if we move around a little. I believe the reason this outer fence is because parts of the spire etc. are falling down. Okay, this is a pretty good spot here. Okay, from this angle we can see all the main components of the church. So now we can see the chancel, the nave. This would be the north aisle. I just realised I can't see the south aisle. But anyway, you can see the spire, and you can see how the chimney's been held up. And if I'm not mistaken, Charles Gray Round, I'm pretty sure him and his wife, they funded the church heating system. So they're obviously very caring for the people here. Oh, and that annoying plane's back again. Okay, let's have a look and see if we can see closer to the window. I'm just wondering if some of this stonework, for example around the Victorian window, is actually from the original church. Right, anyway, we shall move around to the north side. Okay, off we go. Try not to climb over too many headstones. Although it's never easy when you measure yew trees. Right, so looks like a pine tree, got elderberry and blackberry. Okay, somebody's lost something from a dog, I think. Okay, getting distracted. Right, so another Irish yew. And another one here. Okay. This is a pretty good spot. Now we have moved on the north side and we look upon the north aisle. Now the north aisle was built over the round family vault from the 18th century. And we can see various windows here that some have been boarded up. can see a big hole in that one. Okay, we shall continue on the north side. So from this angle we can see the Irish yew, and if we look at the windows, got a different perspective, but I've just noticed bird's nest on the first window, and looks like a silver birch growing out of the nave wall, the north aisle wall. So again we can see the broken window, but if we look above, where the tracery starts, there's a bird's nest there, perhaps. And if we go up a little bit higher, we've got, looks like a silver birch growing out. Amazing, isn't it? How on earth did that get up there? I was trying to work out what these holes are in the boards on the windows, and I've got a feeling it might be for the bats. Okay, we shall walk more towards the west. And if you do come here, you can see clearly the way this land slopes off for where the castle and moats were. We can see how long the corrugated fencing's been up. It's rusting. It's over 30 years. Got a sign there, look, various signs. So if we follow it up, we can see we've got the gutter there. Well, this one does sadden me to actually get to the end of it, really. So, going to make our way round to the west side. Okay, what we'll do is we'll walk this direction, so I'll show you the sort of land, the way the terrain. Now, since doing my initial research, I did read that certain experts believe that the castle that was here, I'll say here, it was the actual castle itself was just over there, but this would be part of the defence, dates from the Romans. So that opens up a whole new world, and that the Normans simply modified it, and the Saxons would have used it, of course. You can see it slopes down here. And the photographs well, not the photograph, the sketch in the 1800s, there was a cottage in there. There's another fine view, isn't it? was trying to work out that tree, if it's actually a cherry tree. Which would make it over 30 years old, I guess. Okay, going to pass under another yew tree. This will be the final one. This one, I believe, is probably Victorian period, not sure. Oh, hold on. Something always catches my eye. £17.97. So now we can see that the sunlight is basking the west side, as we've made a full circumference of the church. Now if we look at the window above the west doorway, the stained glass windows were added to the nave in the 1880s. Now, talking of the 1880s, Arthur E. May was the author. He was born in Birch and wrote about attending church here in the year 1880. And Arthur wrote, "The rector's family sat in the chancel, occupying the front pews of the south side. The squire of Birch and his family sat opposite on the north side. The farmers, tradesmen and other residents of the parish occupied the remaining pews at the front of the nave. The farm labourers sat at the back of the church and never entered till the bell had stopped ringing." Now in 2020, some 30 years later, a solution was found to convert this lovely old building into residential property, and planning permission was granted. But sadly the project has since fallen through and structural engineers deemed the renovation unsustainable. In July of this year, 2023, it was decided that St Peter St Paul's Church would be demolished. The plans are still undecided of what to do, but most likely a memorial garden will stand here instead. Perhaps out there somewhere a special person with deep pockets and a vision could save this fine old church. It may not be too late. My last mention must surely go to the residents of Birch who have tirelessly campaigned to save this iconic building. The spire is the fourth highest in Essex. Surely that must stand for something. Well, I hope you enjoyed that and thank you very much.